So we're connected. Welcome everyone. We wait for a moment so everybody can get in. Two attendees I can see already. Anthony, Joe, welcome. So Adam and Chris are also with us. You can't see them right now. I can already.
Can they hear us?
Now they can hear you. When you say something, the video switches right over to you. So
go
ahead. We just give like a few minutes or 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut now that I know that, Ollie.
That's the challenge.
Yeah, for me, yes.
Okay, we have 9 guys who signed up for this issue, but Coop already sent me a message that he's busy. He will not be joining, so I guess we're more or less ready to go. So, Chris, if I can give that over to you.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to our second episode of the Molchanovs Instructors Live. And yeah, we really appreciate all of your participation and feedback and everything like that. It's been great. And today we're going to have a very interesting session. We have one of our founding team members, Adam Stern, who's going to be doing a refresher on how to teach Frenzel, which is one of those tricky skills that we all know students get a lot of challenges in trying to get understand exactly what it is that you're talking about. So really looking forward to that. And also, you know, our standards master, educational director Ollie is going to be providing some updates on our system. And yeah, so I think we can. So Ollie, am I right? Where you are going to be talking first, and then we'll be turning it over to Adam for his session on Frenzel. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. So if Adam and Chris, if you guys don't want to steal the video, just mute the microphone, then you do not accidentally steal. So there's a button on the bottom left where you can go mute. There you go. Then you're not accidentally switching out yourself. Good. All right. Welcome, guys. We just posted right now, like 5 minutes ago, maybe some of you have already seen it, new course completion forms. So that's a thing that is sounds quite abstract. I'm aware of that why should we use such a bureaucratic piece of paper? Let's talk about that once we have found them. So as last time, to repeat a bit, how do you find your stuff, where you find your all the materials that you need to teach? So I'm switching over now to my screen, and I'm trying to find in all that stuff that is here. That's my Facebook page. There you go. That's the entry portal that you all know best by now. And when you go to instructor materials, there is a section. So to repeat that, this is a Dropbox. If you use Dropbox anyway, and you have that as an app on your computer, on your phone, or wherever, it looks like this. So now I'm trying to do some acrobatics here and go show you my Dropbox for a second. Let's see if I can do that. Yes, I can. So now you should see my Dropbox here. And the Molchanovs instructor files are here in the bottom left. And it's always up to date. You can see with the green OK sign, this Dropbox has already been updated. So all my material that I'm working with is up to date. So let's go into the Wave 1 course. We have updated the Wave 1 and the Wave 2 course completion forms. When I go in here, and I double click that thing here, then you should see either on your own screen or now on the shared screen, the course completion form for the Wave 1 course. Now, first things first, what is the difference between a Wave and a lab course? Well, basically a lab course is the upper part of the course completion form. So when you go, if you can't see what I'm seeing, so if my screen is not sharing, please let me know, Chris or Adam, just give me a quick OK sign, thank you. Excellent. So when you start from top, that's basically all the requirements that you have to do before the course, the prerequisites. So the swimming test, a medical statement should be in your possession, and the liability release should be signed and in your possession. Then you have the dry skills, which are the same for lab and for wave certification. Then follow the pool performance requirements and the pool skills that you will teach. If a student finishes all of that, so including introduction to dynamic no-fins, that is the end of a lab certification or a lab course. In that case, you can certify the student and still give that, if you like, you have two options. You can give that form to your student, so the student can go to another Molchanovs instructor later on within 1 year of the start of a course and do the rest. In that case, you would have to keep a copy of this file here, because you are signing, the student is signing at the bottom that you have done all these skills, and the student confirms that with his or her signature. The same is the case when you do a full wave course and you do the skills in the open water section, where the performance requirements and the skills. And if a student cannot finish all of them, and that's why we will talk about equalization today, because we all know as instructors that being able to equalize is the biggest obstacle to finish a whole certification also for wave. So of course, you will always be able to do stuff, even if they can't equalize or they have any other problem there which keeps them from finishing the course. So you can do, for example, relaxation position in open water, you can do surface exhale tests, procedures, and so on. But in case you cannot finish all the skills, or the student cannot finish all these skills, then you can still certify the student lab 1 in that case, and then you hand that course completion form again to the student. So the student keeps the record what they already finished and what they need to finish later on with another instructor to get the full wave certification. Little tip out of experience, paper gets lost very easily and quickly when you hand it over. Tell your students to take a photo right away, right then and there. When you hand them the course completion form, tell them, take out your phone, take a photo, and then that photo has is more likely to survive for a few months. So that photo is then also good enough for the next instructor to check, you did this, you did that, that's fine. So we only need to do these 3 skills. That's going to be 1 open water session. Let's go and do it. So if you look over the whole course completion form, let me know or let us know if anything is unclear. So if there's a skill popping up there, they have changed. I'm aware of that, whether we have added more, we have changed some. If now something looks like unfamiliar, we're here to answer your questions either now or later on in the Q&A, which will be at the end of the session. And we will go on to the Wave 2 course completion form. So I'm going to the Wave 2 folder in the instructor materials Dropbox, and there you can see again the updated files that we have. Open the course completion form and you see exactly the same, very similar, but the content is obviously very different. The procedure itself is the same. There's no difference how to handle this piece of paper. And now let's move on to the question why you should, and it's compulsory that you do such a procedure, that you have such a course completion form for each student. So, assuming the worst case, you are certifying a student and later on that student has an accident. Something that we hope will never happen or happens as rarely as possible. And then an investigation is being launched in certain countries. That's even compulsory, so there will be an investigation, and then it pops up that they are certified free divers and they did something, let's say they were diving with a lot of weight. They're completely overweighted. And that was then maybe part of the reason for the accident. it might happen that you as an instructor then get involved in that investigation, that someone will knock on your door or call you or send you a letter and ask like, what is your policy about that? We see there's an accident with an overweighted freediver. What is your policy on that? And with that piece of paper, you can prove that you were teaching to standards, and the standards is what protects you then. If you stick to the standards, then we as an organization, Molchanovs, will have your back and work with you in that case. On the other hand, when you teach outside standards, then you are pretty much on your own. So it's in your own interest that you follow the standards, and you can prove that by having the students sign what they learned. In the long run, we want to go digital with this paper. That's a legal question, which is then a problem because it's different in every country. For example, where I come from, in Switzerland, PDFs are not legal documentation. Online forms in certain circumstances with digital signatures, however, are proof or would hold up in a court case. So we have to figure out now, can we be that's an agency that is progressive and goes ahead, does the first step and goes digital, and we want to do that, and we will do that. For now, until you get further news about that, use those course completion forms for each level. Okay, I'm closing that, going back to my screen, I hope. Stop sharing, there you go. I'm checking quickly if there are any questions that have come up. Yes, exactly. Someone is already asking that it should be online like the exam, and that's exactly what we work on. And give us some time, we will get it done, hopefully sooner than later. All right. Then I have a second question, or I have a question for you guys. We also have the exams as PDFs on the Dropbox. My question to you is, and you can answer it by raising your hands. You see on the bottom of your screen, there's a hand signal. So let me know if any one of you actually uses or needs the paper and pen version of the exams, or is anyone using the online version? So only those who use the paper and pen, please raise your hands. So we see 2. All right. So Wayne, for example, raises his hands. I will now turn off your microphone. Wayne, can you tell us quickly why you're using the pen and paper versions?
Hey, Ollie, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
So we're using it because we needed the Chinese version. So I actually have to translate them and then use that as a translation for my students. Excellent.
Okay, so I hope everybody could hear that. So it's about Chinese versions of exams and the multilingual and translation of everything official. That's a big topic that we're working on as well right now. We don't promise anything when will happen what, but it's definitely on the table. And so in your case, Wayne, perfectly fine that you use a translated version. And that means you're not using the original English version at all, other than just as a basis for your translation. Is that correct?
They actually still answer the English version. Sometimes I ask them to use the online version, but then it's very hard because they would have to read the Chinese and try and read the English and the Chinese and try and find it on the find it on the online. Sorry, the other way around. They need to try and read the English version online and then trying to find the Chinese translation on the paper, and then but that takes forever to finish. Yeah.
Okay, I get that, yeah. Good, so we are working on that we can find a better solution for that this becomes a bit more straightforward. So thanks for that input, Wayne. I will mute you now again, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna ask also Anthony. So I'm having you now live. So Anthony, what is your procedure there? It's not unmuted yet, so try again. There you go, Anthony is unmuted.
Yeah, it's because also we teach in Chinese. So yeah, same as Wayne. we teach in Chinese.
Okay, good. Thanks for that input. So we see it's mainly a matter of language. And I just assume now that this is probably the main input that we can, the main takeaway for us there. Okay, I'm going to lower your hand. Oh, we have one more hand raising. That was an accident. It just disappeared again. Okay, that was good as an input for us. And that's it for the technicalities and the technical side for now. So I'm going to hand it over now to Adam, I would say, and I unmute you. Or you can unmute yourself.
I'm muted. Cool. All right. So I might sound a little bit nasal and husky. I've had a bit of a cold. So we're basically just going to go through how to teach Frenzel. And I think for me, this topic has actually become simpler and simpler as time has gone on, because I think the first time I really taught Frenzel, or the first time I really felt like I had a real grasp on teaching Frenzel equalization, there were a lot of steps to it. And it was a lot of like, oh, this is a moving part, that's a moving part, and you've got to make sure you're not doing this, and you're not doing that. And then as time has gone on, I suppose like the minimum requirements someone needs to, the minimum skills that people need to have a handle on to actually Frenzel has just become simpler and more basic for me. And so what I will go through now is I suppose like the way that I'm currently teaching Frenzel, which I feel is more effective than I ever have taught it, and it's actually simpler than I ever have taught it. We always start, or I like to start Frenzel equalization or equalization in general by touching on all the anatomy. So obviously, like when you're teaching your students, you're going to be using language that they may never have encountered before, or you got to identify effectively what are the moving parts in the actual equalization mechanism, right? So we start by going over the anatomy. Now, the first piece of the anatomy that we usually touch on is the vocal fold, also called the glottis. I think, to me, those terms are interchangeable. If you look at a textbook or you look at other things, like in some places it'll be called a glottis, in some places it'll be called a vocal fold. I prefer to call it a vocal fold because I think it's a little bit more anatomically relevant, because we are talking about the muscle that basically surrounds your vocal cords. And because later on when we learn mouthfeel equalization, a lot of the way that we shift air from the lungs into the mouth is to do with creating a humming noise. And we do the humming noise for a very specific reason. I like to emphasize at the beginning that the vocal cords themselves are involved. And the vocal cords themselves are actually involved in keeping the vocal fold closed, or keeping the glottis closed. So they do play a role in that. So just to clarify why you'll hear me call it a vocal fold, not a glottis, but it doesn't really matter. They are interchangeable. So we start by identifying the vocal fold, and we all know the exercise where we get them to take in a deep breath, stick their tongue out, and like open and close the vocal fold. Right, it's a pretty standard freediving thing at this point. Now, for the most part, I don't find that people have any issues controlling the vocal fold. I sometimes get messages from people saying things like, you can probably imagine what my Instagram DM inbox looks like. I get a lot of messages from people asking me various queries about things, and often they'll say things like, oh, I think I'm not able to close my glottis. And in my experience, I don't know if I've ever really encountered many people who had difficulty closing the glottis, because it is a part of the body that we all have a very intuitive control over. We'd have to, otherwise we wouldn't be able to function. It's the same with most of the things in our mouths and in our oral cavity. So we identify the vocal fold by getting them to open and close it, open and close it. The truth is that getting them to do that exercise will not increase their control of the vocal fold, at least not in the short term. In the long term, it may do, drawing attention to it. But in the beginning, all you're really doing is just saying, hey, this thing exists. So they're aware that it exists, but the reality is that we are not immediately increasing the control of this muscle group. The next thing that we will, I suppose, draw attention to is the soft palate. Now, the soft palate is, the thing that dangles at the back of your mouth when you wiggles when you snore. You can make noise with it. What I will do here is I'll introduce it. I'll have students put their tongue up against the roof of their mouth and slide the tongue back so that they can feel the hard area of bone become a softer area of muscle and cartilage. Now, I talk about how the soft palate changes position when we're breathing through our nose or breathing through our mouth. And then often we'll get the students to inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, or inhale through the mouth, exhale through the nose. And once again, you're not going to be increasing a student's control in the short term, maybe in the long term, but in the short term, definitely not. It's just drawing awareness to this part of the body, the fact that it exists. Now, why have we gone vocal fold and soft palate first? Because for me, there's two sort of like separate types of muscles that play a role in equalization. And the vocal fold and the soft palate are kind of like valves or gatekeepers. So the vocal fold is the muscle that opens and closes access of air from the thoracic cavity to the oral cavity. And then the soft palate opens and closes the access of air from the oral cavity to the nasal cavity. So they're like valves if we're looking at this like a machine, which I like to do with equalization. I like to look at it like a machine. So the vocal fold and soft palate are the valves. And then the other parts, which is our larynx and our tongue, these are more like the piston. These are more like the working parts that are actually pushing air around. So from basically just below your epiglottis to just down to just below your vocal fold or your glottis is a group of muscles called your larynx. And your larynx is the main engine of all your equalization. Your larynx is the thing that moves air around. It is the thing that moves, that actually when you reverse pack, it's what basically controls the suction that sucks air up from the lungs. And it's the thing that pushes air from the oral cavity into the nasal cavity, from the mouth into the nose, right? So the larynx is the creator of pressure as such. And the tongue basically makes a seal or a lock against the roof of your mouth so the air doesn't escape out of your mouth. But the truth is that you don't even need the tongue when it comes to Frenzel, because you can do a P Frenzel. And a P Frenzel is when the tongue is relaxed and neutral, and then the lips are just creating the resistance. So the lips, the tongue, whatever the hell you like, you can put your finger there and create the resistance, right? But something has to stop the air from leaving the mouth, so the air goes into the nasal cavity and not out your mouth. And lips, tongue, fist, whatever you want. Let's just go with tongue. It's probably the most effective. Okay, so these are, I suppose, our four main muscles when it comes to equalization: vocal fold, soft palate, larynx, tongue. Now, the thing that all like freediving equalization kind of has in common is that everything, all forms of freediving equalization aim to increase either air pressure or air flow into the nasal cavity, right? So I feel like it's important with students to emphasize this, because we're really building from the ground up what their concept of equalization is. We have to create a picture. And, we all know how to draw the really basic, picture of the diver side on, where you can see, the tongue and all the different cavities. I'm sure, I don't know, many of you may have seen me draw it a few times. I'm sure you've drawn it many times. And the reason that we need to, I suppose, emphasize that we need to be creating airflow or increasing air pressure into the nasal cavity is because as time goes on, and we need to be, and as we are creating a more complex picture of equalization, we do need to have this kind of clear goal for our equalization the whole time. because we need to be having, if we can increase air flow and air pressure into the nasal cavity, that means we can equalize the middle ear, it means we can equalize the sinuses, it means we can equalize the mask. So it's like, I think like, sorry, we have to, I suppose, like, I prefer to not present equalization as a topic of this is how you equalize the ears, because we need to present it, I suppose, or I like to present it as a way that this is how we equalize the air spaces, right? And it's the same, like, for example, it's when we reverse pack, we are equalizing the mouth, right? We reverse pack, we equalize the oral cavity, and then we use the air in the oral cavity to equalize the nasal cavity and everything that shoots off from the nasal cavity. So it's a process of equalizing all the air spaces, and the only airspace that doesn't need to be equalized is the lungs. It still needs to handle the pressure, but it doesn't need to be equalized. Right? So we've introduced our anatomy, and then effectively, like we were saying before, like getting them to be able to control the valves, or getting them to be able to, like, you know, have an active control of their vocal fold, or getting them to have an active control of their soft palate. That's something that is something we worry about way down the line. But the things that we can, in the space of our courses, or in the space of teaching these students, things that we can really improve their control of is the use of their tongue and the use of their larynx. Now, once again, we all have an intuitive understanding of how to use these muscles, because we use it for speech, we use it for eating, we use it for breathing, right? When you're breathing, your larynx moves up and down ever so slightly. So these muscles are always moving around with each other. So what we need to do, I suppose, is we need to find what's called cueing exercises. So a cueing exercise is where we ask someone to do something that they'll be able to do, that will inadvertently get them to move their equalization muscles or whatever in the way that we want to, which is good for whatever we're teaching. So I could say, hey, you know, like raise your arm, but what I really want them to do is to, I don't know, like extend their elbow. If I'm teaching someone how to extend their elbow. In the instance of let's start by getting them to control their larynx, because that's probably going to be the most important one. The tongue is a little bit more, we have a lot more control of anyway, or we're a lot more aware of the tongue, whereas we're not super aware of the larynx. So the larynx, the cueing exercises that I find the best, well, let's go through a few of them. The first one is the ugliest, but it's very effective. And that is to get a student to stick their tongue out as far as it will go. And because we use our tongue and our larynxes in conjunction with speaking and eating, it means that we have a lot of paired movements. We have like a lot of paired muscle movements with these different muscles. So when we move the tongue in specific ways, often we'll follow with the larynx, and vice versa with the larynx and the tongue. So if we ask someone to stick their tongue out as far as it goes, often they'll actually bring their larynx up as their tongue extends. And if they don't do that, the next step of that is to ask them to heave as if they were vomiting. And once again, it's a very inelegant, messy solution, that one, but it is very effective, because when you ask someone to heave as if they were vomiting, they'll always lift up their larynx to push like that. And then it's a matter of getting them to feel it. So I always ask them to, after I get them to do it a few times, I always ask a student to put their hands on their throat so I can feel their throat moving up and down. And then it's just a process of them being able to starting to learn how to move it up and down. Now the thing is that with absolute certainty, every student you'll ever have will be able to move their larynx up and down, because otherwise they wouldn't be alive. But whether they have enough active control over it for you to say, hey, lift your larynx up, and they go, yep, bang, that's a different story. That's what we need to develop. So the next cueing exercise is that I'll get a student to sing from low to high. So when you sing low tones, your larynx drops down, so your vocal fold is further down, and you sing a lower tone. When you sing higher tones, your larynx rises up and it brings your vocal cords higher up. And that's how we're changing the pitch. So, we get the students to go, just slowly go low to high or high to low, whatever. And the whole purpose here is just to get them to start to feel the movement of their larynx, just to get them to start to feel that things are moving and they can control it. And this is how it's being moved. So once again, after they do that, get them to put some fingers on their throat to feel it moving around. And the last cueing exercise that I like is that I have a student put air in their mouth, just not a huge amount, not like a mouth fill, but like just like a little like thing like that. And I get them to, without the air going back into their lungs, get them to push the air, use their cheeks to push the air from their mouth back into their throat, and then back and forth, just like this. And you can see how my larynx is moving up and down when I do that. The key here with teaching this one is that you just got to make sure your students aren't losing it back in, or just like, swallowing the air back into their stomach or their lungs. Or so in my experience, that one isn't the most effective, but it's still an option, because what we effectively need to have as instructors is we need to have many different cueing exercises, because one of them will work for every student, but all of them won't work for every student, right? So it's just a matter of trial and error. So now we've introduced the movement of the larynx. They know about the anatomy, so they know they have to keep their vocal fold closed. They know they have to keep their soft palate open. Not that they're going to have any real awareness of doing that, but they know about it. And then it's a matter of choosing a tongue position. Now, when I used to teach Frenzel, I used to focus a lot on the different tongue positions. And the more that time has gone on, the more I feel like it's not super important. And it's actually a lot more important to have control of the larynx and use the tongue just as a stopper. So I usually find that I will teach first like a T Frenzel or a K Frenzel, and then ask the student what position they're comfortable with, and get them to just roll on from there. And if they're doing a different position, like if they're using like what we are terming the SP position, which is the soft palate lock, we used to refer to it as the H lock, but I think we're trying to be a little bit more anatomically correct these days. So the SP lock, which is when they use the back of the tongue up against the soft palate, then let them do that. Or if they're using a P lock, where they're just using lips, then let them do that. In the end of the day, the more, in the beginning, I find the more that I interfere with a student's equalization, with the student's Frenzel, the more issues I run into. And then you've got all the time in the world down the line to tighten things up. And the thing is that if you can get a student to Frenzel on your course, they can go home for the next few weeks and do exercises which are going to streamline their Frenzel, or which are going to allow them to do a more specific type of Frenzel. But I find that if I interfere too much in the space of time that I have on a course, I stuff things up for them. They're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm doing the P lock or the K lock. And it's like, oh, don't worry about the bloody locks, just go, So yeah, that is about as simple as Frenzel gets for me right now, or sorry, as complex as it gets for me. I introduce the anatomy. I get them to move, open and close the vocal fold. I get them to move the soft palate. I get them to control the larynx. I get them to put their tongue in the lock, and I get them to pinch their nose, put their tongue in lock, and lift the larynx. And that's about it. The complexity comes into identifying issues that your students are having, right? So like your students are going to have a variety of issues, and you've got to have the answer for what's going on, or the solution for what's going on. And without sounding like a dickhead, I feel like I'm getting to the point now where I can get feedback from just about any student, or can watch just about any student in the water and immediately know what's going on. So I do believe there is an easily identifiable solution to every scenario. And I think it comes from seeing the same situations over and over and over again with your students, right? So for example, the most common thing that we're going to get, and it depends on what part of the world you're teaching in, but I find that for me, about 25% of people that come and take a course won't be able to equalize head down immediately. They'll struggle to equalize inverted. And when a person struggles to equalize inverted, there's only two things that can really be going wrong. So we definitely don't have to teach them how to Frenzel. right? So when a student cannot equalize inverted, the solution is not teaching them Frenzel. In fact, most of the time that just, it muddies the water too much for their understanding. So if a student can't equalize inverted, they're either going to be having some sort of like an anatomical issue, by which I mean maybe they have like a eustachian tube dysfunction, like really tight eustachian tubes. Maybe they have some sort of blockage in the nasal cavity, like adenoids or inflamed sinuses, or you know, all the wonderful, or a deviated septum or something like that, right? So that they're just like, no matter how much pressure they put in the nasal cavity, they're going to struggle to push apart the eustachian tubes and get air into the middle ear. And so they will find that the only way, or the easier way they'll be able to equalize, will be to go down feet first and then have the assistance of the air rising up into their middle ear to help them to equalize. So that's one of the scenarios that happens with a student that can't equalize feet first. That can't equalize head first. And the other scenario is that the student holds their mouth in a position in which the soft palate, if you can imagine this is my soft palate, that is pushed closed at the back of the mouth, and they're either holding their soft palate locked up against the back of their mouth, or they're pushing with their tongue up into the back of their mouth. And this is a very, very normal thing for someone who may be intimidated by whatever they're doing to do, because this is a bracing position. This is a position where they're locking down to not theoretically allow water to enter their airways. And it's really interesting as well, when you watch adults learning how to swim, you'll see that often on the surface, they'll struggle to breathe. If you say, hey, just breathe through your nose while you're floating on the surface, they'll actually struggle to breathe because they go into this like brace lockdown position where they lock off access, where they basically stop water from coming to their airways, or that's what their body is telling them to, right? Their body is saying stop water from entering the airways. And so they close, they put their tongue up against the roof of their mouth, soft palate's closed, water can't enter the mouth, and then there's no water going to the lungs. And so it's a similar thing that we get in freediving, but we don't usually, it depends on the student, but usually we don't get it to that extreme. So it can happen through, I suppose, fear, for lack of a better general term, or it can happen simply because that is the comfortable position for a student to hold their mouth in when they're equalizing. So, you know, we put a bunch of people into an MRI machine who could only equalize feet first, and we consistently saw that when they were equalizing, they were either locking their soft palate up against the back of the roof of their mouth or smashing it up against the back of the roof of the mouth with their tongue. But that was with everyone we put in the machine that couldn't equalize head down was doing that. So it's been something that I suspected for a while, that I suppose now it's probably, you know, it's too small like a sample size to be like, yeah, we worked it out, right? Because it was only like 3 people, but at least, you know, we're kind of having a better idea. So how do we get around this? So if a student is not able to equalize feet first, if they cannot equalize head first because of an anatomical issue, and how the hell are you going to know if they have an anatomical issue? Well, you can look up their nose to see if they have a deviated septum, or you can, when you ask them to equalize on land, like you should be able to build a picture of what's going on if you get them just to equalize on land. So if they're equalizing just on land and it's squeaky or it's hard to equalize, then it's probably a safer assumption to think that it's anatomical. If they can equalize perfectly fine while dry, but they're having that issue inverted, then we're probably going to start to think it's more to do with how they're holding a soft palate. So if they have an anatomical issue, basically all of these issues of deviated septum, adenoids, eustachian tube dysfunction, all of these things are going to be best solved by increasing the flexibility of the eustachian tubes themselves. Because the issue here that these divers are having is that they are struggling to create enough pressure in the nasal cavity to push open the eustachian tubes. But if the eustachian tubes were more flexible and easier to be pushed open, then they wouldn't have so many issues. So divers with anatomical issues are never going to solve their issue. They will only learn how to work with their issue. But I found that this is the best way to have them work with their issue, is to increase the flexibility of their eustachian tubes. And there's an exercise where you, the short answer is just equalize a lot. Equalize a lot and you'll increase the flexibility. But there is a specific exercise I get people to do, which is I get them to do a series of 5 equalizations, where the equalizations get firmer and firmer and firmer. The first one they do is they equalize with just enough force to cause an equalization. The second one, they equalize a little bit firmer. The third one is they equalize with the strength that would usually equalize with for a dive. The fourth is they equalize harder than they usually would for a dive, and they hold the tubes open, or they hold the equalization for 3 seconds. And the fifth is they equalize as hard as they can without experiencing any kind of discomfort. And you have to be very clear here not to experience any form of discomfort. And they hold their tubes open again for 3 seconds. And then they have a break for 30 seconds or a minute, and they do it 10 times. And they can do that once a day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times. And they can do that. Usually it's best not to do that more than once a day, because they'll start to probably agitate and then inflame the eustachian tubes. So that's how we deal with those with anatomical issues. And those who have like a mechanical issue, those who are who are holding their soft palate in a position that's going to, what we would term as closed. The best way to get around that is to get that diver to dive feet first. 3 to 5 days of diving feet first on a line is going to be the fastest way to get that student to be able to equalize inverted. Effectively, you have to keep them diving feet first long enough for them to develop a new muscle memory, or like a new level of consciousness with that muscle. So they're effectively changing what has previously felt as normal. So that's why it has to take so long. That's why it takes a few days for that to happen. And what I have found though is the earlier you flip someone over, the lower your success rate. So you can get impatient with the students. Oh, I've been doing this for 2 days already. And you go, oh, let's try it. What happens is they go down inverted. They don't equalize very well. They probably hurt their ear a little bit. And then you're stuffed for your next day. So I just explained to them that like there is only one way they're going to get around this, and that's if they go down feet first and they don't rush it. Patience is key to solving that issue. We've tried a bunch of different little like tricks and things like that to speed the process up, but I found that for the most part, the fastest way is just to persevere with feet first diving. And then what they'll find is they can start to equalize at angles, and then the angles get steeper and steeper and steeper. So for example, with those students, I'll often, after a few days, get them to not dive on a line, but do like a fun dive where they're going down at whatever angle they're able to equalize at. And that's the best way for that to happen. So I'm just trying to think now. Maybe I'll stop talking and I'll ask you guys if you have any questions about maybe common equalization issues that you run into, or any questions about anything I've been speaking about so far.
We have an interesting question coming in from Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading it to you. It's on the Q&A. I just had a student, and I believe he can do BTV. He can go feet first to 11 meters without holding the nose and feeling comfortable. Yeah, obviously there's something good going on. But once doing head first, he can't equalize past 5 meters. Should I ask him to practice more on Frenzel, or just focusing on relaxation, trying to do BTV head down?
So in this instance, I didn't even know we have a whole thing here. Cool.
It's fantastic, huh?
Right? Okay, in this instance, I would have that student dive feet first. BTV, feet first. I'd have them dive in the way that felt natural to them. Because if you've got a natural BTVer, and you're going to teach them how to do Frenzel, it's not going to feel natural for them. And then they're doing 2 things that are not feeling natural. So I would get them to just equalize in the way that is natural for them. And I'd get them to go down feet first until they can start to equalize BTV at an angle, and at least 3 to 5 days in the water of just feet first, no inversion. They just have to be patient. That's the only real way we get past this.
All right. You can also now ask questions to Alexei. He joined us, and when I switch him on the screen, you will be shocked you haven't seen him in such an outfit yet. So, Alexei's
going to tell us how cold it is at 130 meters in Nice.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty cold in Moscow actually. I just got back from Nice. And 130 is pretty cold. It was around, I would say 13 degrees, 14 degrees, but it's totally fine. Like for me, the thermocline is totally and like not an issue when you have a lot of practice diving in Mediterranean or in like Black Sea in Russia, then no problem. If anyone have thermocline issues, you're welcome to Black Sea, to Sochi. We have 8 degrees thermocline there, so then you have like no problem at any competition.
Yeah, well, it looked like that was a big challenge for many who are not used to that, to dive into ice wall vertically.
Yeah, and actually that's the biggest challenge is psychological, and then equalization. Like people, like actually to the topic of the today's webinar, like people get to the ice wall and then they just like get tense, and they swallow the mouthfeel or like literally like have less control over the soft palate.
Imagine that. I did that only for one summer in lakes in Switzerland, where it's also going to 13 degrees at 30 meters. And yeah, equalization is horrible there compared to warm water. So I feel you. We had a nice input from Mitomir here regarding using written exams. He said there's a bit of a feeling that when you have a written exam, a printed exam, that then it's getting you being taken more seriously. And he also mentioned that that might be a cultural thing, and where in his country where he comes from, every important exam is in pen and paper. So can we slowly start to change that, and that it becomes also an online exam is accepted?
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting point. You know, and in different countries and different cultures, it's going to be different. But that being said, we're going to move more and more digital. We'll try and provide support for those people who would like to have paper or don't have good internet connections and things like that. But you know, just so you know, the emphasis of the company is to move into a more digital world. Just FYI.
Yeah, and I can add to that a bit maybe about the philosophy that I get quite often the question still now, why do we not teach? Why do we have, or we can opt to not teach? So everything is done online, the courses are done online, the exams are done online. Does this not lead to a lesser level of knowledge or retention of knowledge? And the answer is simply no, it's not the case. It's actually quite the opposite. That's what I actually researched 25 years ago as my thesis, the combination of computer-based training and then working with an instructor or a teacher back then leads to better results than just working with the instructor. And the interesting question was why? The answer is when you have already read or seen programs or online courses like we do, so you come already with a bunch of know-how and knowledge, and before you even meet your instructor, and then you elaborate on your knowledge, you ask questions, you are answering questions, and so you can work with the knowledge that you have already acquired before you even have started the course face to face. And that elaboration of the knowledge leads then to a better understanding and to a better retention of the knowledge that you actually in total have acquired there. So you can probably trust quite well that the system that we have put up there is quite successful. Yes, Chris?
Oh, yeah, and I wanted to just give people a teaser that is actually going to be one of the future webinar discussions, which is the process that we are building into our system on the journey that the student takes. You know, like we start the student off by giving them access to online materials and manuals, and the idea is for them to be tested from a knowledge basis before they show up. And there's a specific theories of learning that we are building into our system, like Ollie is saying, and also we want to make sure that the time that our instructors are spending with the students is the highest quality and the highest efficiency for our instructors, so that you aren't wasting time providing information that they could have gotten in other ways. So that's going to be a topic for another webinar, and certainly, you know, we welcome the discussion on that and love to hear other views on that, and maybe there are cultural elements to that or marketing elements to that that may be relevant. So stay tuned for that discussion. Also, I would love to meet Sophia. Adam has Sophia on his. Oh, Ellie.
Adam, you need to unmute yourself.
Is it? Sorry, it's not Sophia. It's okay.
Hi, everyone.
Oh.
I haven't quite worked out how to hold my head up straight just yet.
Oh my goodness. Oh, what a sweetie. Who does she look like?
I don't know. I reckon she looks like me, but I see a lot of Erin in her.
She's a cutie.
Yeah.
So guys, I think we're in the last 10 minutes, so would love to open up to Q&A for any questions that you have for any of the board, any of the people on the panel, which is myself, Ollie, Alexi, Adam. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. Michael Mielsen was raising his hand, and I wasn't quite sure if he had a question for the group or for one of the panelists. If you could let us know, that would be great.
I let Michael talk. Let's see what Michael has to say. Hi, Michael.
He's mute. I think he's muted.
Okay, let's try again. It seems like I can't unmute Michael.
Maybe he's muting on his side.
Okay, that's not working, unfortunately. Ah, there you go. Now it's unmuted for me at least. Michael.
Hello?
Yep, all good. We can hear you.
The reception's not so good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep.
we can hear you fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one question. I had a few students that could BVT to only about 30 meters. And at that point, they're either locking their soft palate or they're mask squeezing and then locking their soft palate. I can't BVT, so I don't know any tips to give them.
So, oh, boy. Mikey. So the no hands equalization is limited by all the same factors as Frenzel equalization. So in this instance, like you theoretically should be able to no hands equalize to whatever depth you can Frenzel equalize, because the mechanics for no hands equalization are almost identical. So I think in the case you're describing, what's probably going on is that these students are not reverse packing enough in order to for the depth they're going to. So like if you place emphasis on them reverse packing more frequently, so they have more air in their mouth to no hands with, then they shouldn't run into this issue. It's just that when we're frenzeling, we have this impression that we're moving a lot of air around because the equalizations are so big, but it's this exact same amount of air as when we're doing no hands, right? It always has to be the same amount of air. But we just don't have this impression that's going on. We have this impression that, oh, it's just, I just equalize, right? And so we are using actively filling our oral cavity for us to then continue to no hands equalize. So if you get these students to be more active with their reverse packing, they shouldn't find that they're running into issues at depth. They should always have enough air to shift air into their mask or enough air to continuously shift air into their nasal cavity.
Yeah, one comment or one suggestion, Michael, is that one of the things I found in my own hands-free journey is that hands-free is super sensitive to mask squeeze. If you have any amount of negative pressure in your mask, the first thing it hits is your hands-free. Frenzel is very powerful, and it can kind of overcome that resistance a little bit easier. And so one tip that you may want to give to your fortunately hands-free students is really focus on equalizing their mask first before they do their hands-free equalization. And that will raise the issue that Adam is talking about of whether or not they have enough air in their mouth.
Cool.
All right. So I guess it's
Thanks,
Mikey. I didn't actually know that is you. I've never seen your full name. So hi,
Michael
Mikey.
Nelson.
All right. I'm going to mute you again, Mikey. Thanks. Talk to you soon, huh?
All right, later.
See ya.
Later. All right. So before we go, we are already a bit over time. Anderson's question. Do you see that one, Chris, on the Q&A?
For a student certification fee, does the system charge when registering a new system or charge when certified? Oh, that is a great question. Thank you for asking that question. And the answer is that we have decided that we will charge when the student is being registered and not when they're being certified. Now, this is only for independent instructors. And so if you are certifying more than one student a month, it doesn't make any sense to go for the independent instructor category membership. You should be going to the unlimited membership, because then you'll save money on the certifications. There are no there's no registration fees once you are an unlimited instructor. If you are an independent instructor, then it is charged per registration. And then we're figuring out what the pricing model is, because obviously there's certain registrations, such as for base training and for upgrade courses, which may be less than for full wave and lab courses.
All right. Seems like no further questions or immediate questions coming in. Don't forget, guys, that you can always ask questions anytime through email. I'm quickly checking Facebook. If there's a question on our live stream, Donnie, Mikey, Alex, Bing are there, but no questions in the comments. So that looks good. I think we can call it a wrap then, Chris.
Great. Well, thank you to all the panelists, especially to Adam. And it's Emma, right? Is it Ellie? Ellie. So thank you for thank you for Ellie and Adam, and thank you, Ollie, for organizing as always, and thank you to all the attendees. Please do let us know your feedback. The webinar, as well as our entire system, is a work in progress. We're really interested in iterating quickly and producing the best system for you guys. And we've got some really exciting things that are going to be happening in 2020, which we'll be excited to reveal soon. Alexi, did you have any finishing messages for the group?
I want it would be awesome to have everybody coming back for webinar and having more questions. But no, it was very useful, and I even learned something myself listening to Adam. So very, very useful.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up there. Please stay tuned, and please update your mobile app if you have a chance, so that you can receive the mobile notifications.